Welcome to another episode of Inspired Content. This is another board game week, and the board game for this week is something I've had in my collection for many years. It's called the Emperor's Challenge, or Emperor's Challenge. I'll take a look at it and see what ideas it inspires, and see you on the other side. So, here is the basic board. It's actually a rather large board for a game. So you can see, it looks like there are the instructions here come with several different types of game. The basic game and variations on the basic game. So there are a fair number of variations on this game. The basic premise looks like you start over here on the spot right here. And you put your stages, which are red, blue, green, purple. And the stages are these guys, and you start with those in most game types. And these are gems. They come in blue, green, red, and purple. And the gems are placed at the sites around the board, like the red ones here, the blue one up here. So you get those locations. And as you move out of that home base down here, you roll the dice, one die for your sage, and as you move, there are these little yellow spots. See if we can get in. These yellow tiles, like that one right there. Those are ones you have to land on in order to earn the scepters. Now the scepters you have to have in order to get the crowns. And there's one for each. During gameplay, you have to collect one of each of those gems for the crown. And also during gameplay, the possibility of being able to introduce your dragon as an opponent to the other sages, or a guard of gems or whatnot that you've acquired already, comes into play. These are the sages, a little closer up so you can see. And the scepters look a bit more like a club to me, but we'll go with that. And the gems are just the standard glassy bead gem pieces that you see sometimes. Now, you have to have a scepter before you can introduce the dragon into play. And the dragon often comes in down here at the start location again. And it's really more along the lines of collect your scepter at the yellow spots, one of each colored stone that goes on a colored stone mine, and then you go and collect your crown, and then you go all the way back to home base. Basic premise of it, but there are variants of the game that make it possible to have, how many do we have? There are 8 different variants of this game, just within the instructions alone, not even counting some of the things I came up with. But really what you have here is a board with markers for gemstones, special golden markers, 2 end points, and 8 pieces for players, and if you count the scepters as a separate piece, then you have 12. So you could have 12 pieces, different colors. It opens itself up to a lot of different types of play, so I'll get to that right now. The Emperor's Challenge. I would have to say, give it about a 6.9 out of a 7.1. Because I actually really enjoyed this game because of, it's not just one game, it's multiple games. It's the ability to play it in a lot of different ways. So it's more the parts to games, and you can make games with it. And so they give you a couple different varieties of ways to play, and I love a game that has so much potential for variable ways to play, and it's brilliant for coming up with new game ideas. So here we go. I love the mechanics of, there's a chess variant in there. They call it chess, and I wouldn't really call it chess, but a variant of chess in there where you have the dragon and the sage pieces you move around as pieces, but you also have the staff, or the whatever they call it, scepter. So they have the scepter that moves sort of by pivoting on each of its ends, and it moves by, you roll a die and it tells you how many spaces to move the end, and you move that end. I think if you roll doubles or something like that, you get to change direction halfway through your movement. So like, say one die rolls a 3, you get to move this end 3, and then you get to move this end 3, something like that. I forget how that mechanic goes, but we can look back at the video for that one. So I love that mechanic for pieces, and its potential in making a variant of a sort of a chess or checkers like game where all the pieces move in a way similar to that, where pivot points become relevant and useful. I think that's a mechanic I may have to incorporate in a future game. Okay, one of the other things that came to mind was with the collecting of the gemstones, I got to wondering if there's a way to do a game where instead of random rolling dice or a spinner or a set rate of movement like in chess, what if you accumulate some form of currency or whatever, like the gemstones, and you can use them up or you can save them, and you have to spend those to get movement points. So you could strategically save up for movement bursts that other members don't get, and part of that would be movement bonuses. Movements you make could trigger events that get you more movement currency. It's a hard concept to explain, but the ability to strategically plan your movements, and your movement is a finite resource in the game, that I think I don't know what storyline for the game I'd make for it, but I do think that's a movement mechanism I want to look into doing. Okay, I'm excited about this one because I hadn't really thought something like this would come up with this game, but you have the sage and you have the dragon, and some of the game mechanics have like you're one or the other, or one player is one and one is the other. I got to wondering if I could maybe make a game mechanism where you do some shape-shifting. So maybe it's not sage and dragon, but instead a person and a werewolf, and you can only be one in a given turn, so shifting from one to the other counts as a turn, but have a mechanism for the character turning from one thing to another and having that relevant and useful at certain events in the game. So you have to plan appropriately to do that. Maybe it's vampires versus werewolves, and turning is a event that you can only do for that turn. So I might explore doing that, because I kind of like seeing if you can incorporate a shapeshifter mechanism in. Make the crowns that they have to get. Each player has one, and the crowns are targeted to an element, not one of each color stone, but like the stones would match 4 elements, and each crown would be the crown of their element. And you could do the same thing with the scepters. 2 of the scepters would be elemental scepters, and 2 of the crowns would be elemental crowns. And your goal would be to collect 4 of each elemental stone to then empower the crown or the scepter, and the crown or the scepter then grants you the ability, some in-game ability that you didn't have until you got that. So you have to collect 4 stones, get the crown, and then you have an ability that lets you do something you couldn't do before. And so you're looking to collect the crown of an element, and 2 scepters of elements, and then once you've done that, you're looking to get the 4 stones that would get you the last element, and the first person to do that wins. Use the gemstones as eggs for dragons instead of gems. The sage would go and try to get a dragon egg and then bring it to a hatchery or something like that, and then dragon, you're trying to hatch a dragon of each color, and dragons can be killed by a sage with a scepter. So you can kill your opponent's dragons before they can get back to the home start site. So you leave the start site, you collect an egg, bring it to the hatchery, get another color egg to the hatchery, and you're trying to get 1 of each color to hatch, and then get it to head back to the start location. And that can be played with that game as it is, I imagine. Wizards versus dragons. Wizards move like pawns in chess, and dragons move like checkers. Scepters are like the king me action in checkers. So, like, the pawns can only move forward until they reach a point where they get a scepter, and now they can move in all directions. And the checkers can only move hopping in one direction. They can't hop backwards until they are king-made with the scepter. Alright, so those are some of the ideas, and there are probably a bunch more considering there's so much material there to work with, so hope there's some inspiration in there, and I'll see you next time.